12 o'clock, 12:10. Hi, everybody, and welcome to my live today with Anna from Burnout Broccoli. I appreciate you guys being here. We had a few hiccups this morning with technology. That happens. not not my forte, but I survived it, right, Anna?
That's right. It's all good.
Yeah.
Technology. I mean, I
All good.
I love technology, but sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes we're like, what's going on? Today, I am excited to have you on as a guest and really just have this conversation about the neurochemistry of leadership and what it is that you do. So, if you could introduce yourself, tell us what you do, who you are, and then we could get into our conversation.
Yeah, you betcha. Hello, everyone. So I'm here today talking to Delisa, and I'm a specialist in dopamine optimization. And I work with burnt out entrepreneurs at different stages in their business who want to regain their energy levels in a holistic kind of way without doing drugs, taking the pills and going to the shamans or even, some intense therapy. So all the things that you want to try that are natural and healthy and fun for you to optimize your dopamine. I'm kind of like your go-to person for that. So that's what I do.
You know, you mentioned something that I'm sure people will be a little bit up in arms with, right? So you said you support people that so that you're not going on the medications or the some of the drugs that are out there. And also, you said that you help them that they don't necessarily need to go to a shaman or do therapy. Now, these are very controversial things, I will say, because there are some people that may need to be on some medication. I don't know, like everyone is different, and there are some people that may need to meet with a counselor. A psychotherapist, a psychologist, psychiatrist, for whichever stage, and for leaders, founders, those in leadership position, startups. You saying, well, no, you don't necessarily. I can help you as a coach, right? And the first thing they're going to say is, what is your qualifications? That's step one. And who are you to tell me that I don't need this medication? So, what was proven? What have you shown in your therapy, in your coaching program? Discuss that, share that with us.
Sure. Well, I think, to even explain why I'm saying all those things, I need to go back and kind of tell you how this even came about. And the thing is that the reason I even got into coaching was because back when people that I love in my family were on the brink of suicide, there are people I love who struggle with drug addiction. I could see that unfortunately they were going from specialist to specialist and not necessarily getting the solution they needed. And it was so frustrating because you can imagine when someone in your life is in that kind of terrible, painful, stuck state, you're like, well, just like find someone who can figure it out. Like you got to be able to hang on to your life here. How come these things aren't getting solved? And so what pushed me into coaching is that I realized the amount of love and attention that people require when they struggle with really serious issues, mental health issues, addiction and stuff like that is huge. It's like, it needs to be a holistic approach. The amount of care they need to put into different areas of their life, which is not just, up here. It's in the body. It's how you live, how you work. All of that basically made me realize that if I want to help the people I love in my life, then I better figure out, how to do this on my own so that I can support them in the areas where it's lacking from others. And so then I have my personal burnout experience as well, right, Delisa? So when I went through burnout, when I crossed over into 30s and now like I'm close to 40, I basically tried a lot of different things and nobody was able to give me a clear answer on whether my energy levels are going to come back to me or not, because in a lot of ways, we have these amazing professionals who work in their own kind of like niches, right? And I encourage everyone to take advantage of that support and work with the professionals and try different things, because you need to educate yourself too on what's working for you. And, when people start taking antidepressants, for example, like sometimes that's a necessary step, right? Because it's gonna like save you from making some dumb decisions in your life, as I call them. But at the same time, if you're still finding yourself tired, or you're like kind of still stuck, then you need to talk to someone who's gonna see the big picture and get you unstuck. And that was my mission from the get-go, to help people see the big picture. Because whether we are talking medication, whether we are talking ayahuasca ceremonies, whether we are talking, talk therapy, these things oftentimes don't resolve all of the root causes for why you're burning out. And a lot of the time, they just mask the symptoms, like in the case of taking medication, right? Oftentimes, you're going to feel like, okay, maybe I'm okay, but have you, actually dealt with your workaholism as a type of addiction? Yes or no, right? Like I
Yeah.
help people hop off of that dopamine roller coaster, like that's at the core of all of these behaviors. Then when people go to talk therapy, oftentimes they go for many, many years on end. And, like I love therapy myself. I recommend it to everyone. It's wonderful. I think people should be supported in many different ways. But sometimes it's like, I'll meet people who have been going to therapy since they were 18. And I'm like, well, why are you still burning out, right? Like,
Yeah.
haven't behaviors changed? And that's where I decided, you know what, I'm going to figure this out. As someone who has a background in research, I'm going to look at the academia studies, research, and findings to understand what is the state of this conversation in like research. And I found that our information on burnout is pretty outdated too, because it's like, from the 80s. So I started working the angle of biohacking and the latest science to basically bring in all the newest understandings of how the body works, how the mind works, and started experimenting, right? Because a lot of the time, unfortunately, the academia solutions, the big studies, they'll be like 20, 30 years behind the current like trends and threads of.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, like, I have this attitude. When I burnt out, I was like, this is gonna be my job to figure out how to make myself good, how to fix myself.
Right.
And so, like, I kind of like try to impart that attitude to people too, where it's like, use the science. The science is supposed to belong to everyone. Like, use it for yourself, right? Nobody should
Yes.
be gatekeeping it. And I love like what people like Huberman Lab are doing, because he's like opening up the doors of science to people so you can make yourself happy. But then there's another problem, Delisa, right? Which is like
Yes.
abundant science out there and information on how to get yourself healthy, yet people are still stuck and they're
Yes.
still sick. Why do you think that is?
Well, most people are stuck because there's a mindset. There's this there's something holding them back. It could be a trauma, perhaps.
Right.
Hello?
And what's holding them from back
Did you
from?
hear me?
Yeah, I did. So like if they have trauma, for example, what do you think is holding them
Oh,
back
okay.
from finding the help for that?
Um, there could be a lot of things holding them back. They're feeling unworthy. They're tired. They're stressed. Essentially, they're at that breaking point.
Yeah, I agree. And when you're there, it's really hard to find the inner resource to kind of go out and get better. It's this vicious downward spiral. I call it the downward dopamine spiral, right? It's
Yes.
like the lower you go, the harder it is for you to motivate yourself to even do something. And these feelings of being unworthy, sometimes they can get so powerful in your head. And that's where I think a lot of people get tricked into thinking that, okay, I'm just gonna watch a bunch of videos online and educate myself, and that like just
Mm.
it automatically. But if you're in that low state, that means you don't have enough dopamine for that impetus to action, And that means your mind is kind of fooling itself by just consuming more stuff instead of doing something about it. And so, like when you think about even drug addiction, in that state, people need to kind of make that huge leap to first acknowledge that they have an issue. And once they embrace it, that in itself creates so much lightness for a person, because then they are ready to accept help. But that is sort of like the first step for everyone. And leaders are no different, because, okay, I'm going to say another controversial thing, which is um, high achieving people are all addicts.
Ooh,
In a,
that's yeah.
okay, yeah. Do you have anything to say about that?
Well, yes. I know people can't see me on screen now. I don't know what's going on, but I'm glad that our audio is still working, and I'm also trying to get back in. But when you say that high achieving um, leaders, right? They are addicts. That is, to a degree, they're addicted to something. They're addicted to a habit, a way of being, and it's what you're saying is true. But what I wanted to touch on as you were speaking and you were talking about your time as a researcher, you were the head of a research lead, and then you experienced burnout yourself, which I think is, for you to do what you're doing now, you went through that. So not only what you experience, but your method right now, it's proven not only for yourself, but also for your clients.
Yeah.
And for you to actually say now that as leaders, there's some form of addiction to it. I want you to express a bit more, because remember, I want people to understand that you're not just here talking out of yourself. You're coming from a place of experience. You're coming from a place of research academically. You have not only the academia to back you up, but you also have the personal experience as well as the testimonials, many testimonials from your clients who went through your program. So, as a leader, either in industry, having their own business, and they're going through a burnout, how can they identify what they're addicted to?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's so important, because sometimes we don't recognize what we are addicted to.
100%, Delisa. That's a really good question. So let's start with, that big claim: all leaders are addicts. If you're listening right now and you love your job and you love, working overtime, and I personally work with entrepreneurs, right? So entrepreneurs are all about putting in the hard work. They love what they do. They're excited about building something. That is highly addictive.
Mhm.
When I was, a professional, delivering some incredible results with like huge leverage for companies big and small, I was addicted to this feeling of just being on top, being like, amazing in my job, being someone who can deliver the amount of work that a team would do in a day myself in
Mhm.
a couple of hours. That's a kind of high that we get used to, and we just want bigger highs, more highs. And it's no different than a drug high that people get from taking substances. It spikes your dopamine and then it drops it, and then you're looking for more. So the addiction that I'm talking about is a neurochemical addiction to
Mhm.
the hormones that your neurotransmitters you are producing when you are hitting your goal. And those of you that lead people, that are in the positions of seniority, right, that are founders,
Yeah.
all of you love working, don't you? If I can diagnose everyone right now, it's just like close my eyes, get my crystal ball. You're all workaholics, and I used to be one myself, right? I like to call myself a recovering workaholic. So that is an addiction. We just don't consider it such in society because our societal norms are that we are rewarding that kind of behavior, right? You're a hard worker, like at the time when I was working for a startup, for example, the culture of taking ownership and driving things forward at aggressive speed was so much so rewarded that at some point the entire company burnt out. Right. It's
Yes.
right, and then you're at that like sort of crappy broken moment of, okay, we got there, so what now? It doesn't feel great, nobody's really that excited. It's fun in the process, but then you're like, okay, now everyone is feeling terrible. What do we do next?
And I want to backtrack there because you said something very interesting about the addiction, right? As founders, as entrepreneurs, even those that are leadership positions, and it could be, as a parent in the home too. So I want everyone to understand what Anna is saying is not only reserved for one particular area. The burnout happens everywhere. And our dopamine high and all of those things, they take on different forms. So you talked about dopamine and the chemical in the brain. Can you explain to the audience, to me as well, what is dopamine, how it affects us with the highs and the lows? Because sometimes we can go to those extremely high and extremely low. And a bit about you. I know you touched on your part as a researcher, but people don't recognize, not everyone, unless they follow you, they probably won't fully understand that your research was in meditation, sleep, right? Brain. You did actual brain research for some top companies and people that were doing all of these different apps for to create the dopamine and the ease and all of those things, right? To create the balance. So yes, now that people are aware, you are truly an expert in what you're doing. Can you please explain to us all how this affects us, not like stripping away any other things that we may take, but in our body, how our brain works with the dopamine? What is that chemical reaction? And what is that next step that we need to take?
Yeah, these are great. So hopefully, Lisa, you can remember all these questions so we can come back to
I
those.
will, don't worry.
Let's start with what is dopamine. Okay,
Mhm.
it's not something external to our body. This is inside of us that the body makes, just like our other so-called neurotransmitters. In other words, they are the chemicals in our brain that the brain uses to communicate. So to send the signals, the messages to your body, and the other way around, you need these chemicals to communicate. And so dopamine is the one that I specifically focus on because I believe it's the most important molecule for driven professionals, entrepreneurs, because the result of what they get in their business is very much dependent on how much they can motivate themselves to take action and do something. And dopamine is the chemical of reward, the chemical that makes you feel good when you are setting a goal, you're achieving a goal, when you're, kind of getting somewhere. It's a chemical of seeking, looking for something new, seeking. If you think about our kind of like ancestral behavior and how we were in ancient days, we had to go out and look for things, explore our surrounding. We had to go hunting, all of these different things, protect ourselves, right? And so we are seeking information, we're seeking some kind of result, and this is dopamine. Dopamine is responsible largely for the development of our civilization, I would claim. And so dopamine is something that we are producing in a variety of ways every day. You get up in the morning, you start scrolling on your phone, that's triggering your dopamine because there is new information, you're excited about seeing the news. In the afternoon, you turn on YouTube and you're looking at the news. that is triggering your dopamine, right? Like you're receiving new information. And with that, I'm not going to get into other neurochemicals like the fear response that the news is triggering and whatever. But you're online, you're talking to different people, or you're meeting folks, you're receiving new information. That is triggering your dopamine. You just checked off a bunch of things on your task list. That is dopamine. So dopamine is super important for anyone who's trying to get things done. But when we're so good at driving ourselves this hard all the time, what happens is our dopamine actually gets depleted. And we end up in a state of dopamine burnout, which is when you're on the couch and you just want to scroll social media or binge watch Netflix because you're so tired. That's, dopamine deficiency, dopamine overdrive. And then people are looking for ways to replenish that. It can be with like alcohol, it can be with weed, it can be with just, binging social media. Sometimes it's about social connections, just like being a total social butterfly or, chatting with lots of people online. So, like when we want it, we need it. So yeah, dopamine is critical
Yes.
for all
And
yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
I don't know why sometimes this stuff is giving me issues. I'm telling you, technology today. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
No? Yes? Okay, great. I know I had to use my cell phone, my mobile phone now to
No problem.
to come on so I can see you, but that's fine. So thank you for really sharing that, because it's important for us to recognize like how it works in the brain. And well, you talked about that, which is great. In terms of the meditation, would that not help? What
Yeah.
is it that we can do now? Just touching on your on your programs and how you guide through people. What is that step?
Okay. So what I normally do with people, and let me tell you what I do with people who work with me, and then I'll tell you what the people listening can do as kind of like the first step to do it on your own, to like normalize your dopamine levels. So if you're finding yourself kind of putting off a bunch of important things in your business, maybe you gotta get out there and talk to some people, you're not doing that, or the website hasn't updated itself in a long time. Because you don't want to do it, right? All of those different things. Then let's let's talk. How do we address all that? So when people come to me, I first do a dopamine assessment for them. And by the way, if anyone is interested, you can get it done for free. Just contact me on Instagram. So we find out what the score is, if a person is in the red, yellow, or green zone. And depending on that, we look at what are the different things right now in their life that are draining their dopamine. Where is that energy leaking out from? So, based on research and actually studying people, I was able to put together a comprehensive assessment that's going to give you an idea of where that energy is escaping. So once you know that, then you're able to kind of focus on one of those main things. And then as people work with me, we try to understand what are the underlying drivers for that, behavior to even be there in the first place. And so I have something called the dopamine pyramid. So if you think about a pyramid, right? Like for a person who is healthy, whose dopamine levels are very stable and healthy, and they're always energized and happy and getting things done, then at the bottom of that tier, you have sleep, movement, and eating, then you have time management, then you have emotions, and you have beliefs. So that's a healthy dopamine pyramid. But when a person is burnt out, right, their dopamine pyramid is upside down and it's wobbly. And that's because they have a bunch of, habits, that are not healthy, and underpinning all that, there are certain beliefs. So for example, if your dopamine pyramid is wobbly and you have a low score, that might mean that maybe you have a belief that as an entrepreneur or a high achieving professional leader, you need to grind really hard to get to the result. How is that, making all of that wobbly? Well, that basically then cascades to the next level of how you feel, your emotions. That's making you feel like you're constantly behind. There's, like you're not enough, and you gotta rush and like get places. And then that's like cascading to the next level, which is time management. Now you're feeling like you never have enough time. You need to get 1,000 things done, and you're overwhelmed because it's too much. And that's cascading to the next level of, sleep, movement, and eating. Suddenly you're forgetting meals, or you're eating junk food, or you're drinking, or you're not sleeping well, or thinking about work while you sleep. And here we have this like wobbly pyramid that's like, whoa, I'm burnt out, I'm all over the place.
Yes.
What we do is we flip that pyramid, right? Like we flip it and get you the stable pyramid by working on all of these things. And that's how we get a holistic result. Now, what are the things that people can do on their own as the first step towards that? First of all, I would recommend that people get in touch with me and complete the free dopamine assessment, just so you can get like an understanding of where you're at, what you should look at first, and then start doing the things that will reset your dopamine, reset the dopamine balance. And that means taking away the overwhelm, the overstimulation, getting off of your devices. Like one of the things that I do with my clients, we do regular dopamine resets by just unplugging from everything for a couple of days. And it may feel scary at first, so you need to get some guidance on how to disarm the emotional triggers around doing that. But when you do it, it's like you're a new person after a couple of days. So you want to remove all of the sources of overstimulation. What is stressing you? Try to unpack that and remove that. Food, try to go to something that's a little bit more simple but nourishing. And by doing all of these things, you can kind of go back to that more neutral state where your dopamine levels are rebalancing themselves, the brain is recovering and going, phew, thank you. Okay, now we can get our energy back. We don't have to be all over the place anymore. And that helps with things like ADHD immensely.
So would you recommend using food? I guess you had to shift your nutrition in the beginning, because you said based on the pyramid that you placed, right? You talked about food being the first part, and then of course the time management and so on and so forth. And of course with the time management comes the unplugging. So what would you, of course you have broccoli burnout. That's what you're known on social media. And that's what actually attracted me to your content, to what you were sharing last year. And this is how we started to connect and not only commenting on each other's posts, but really like starting to build a friendship. And I want to understand more about what you're doing. You had me on your channel. So with that, what foods should we use?
That's such a fun topic, right? So yeah, the bottom of that pyramid is we have the sleep, movement, food. All three are important. And when we think about food, we can either eat in order to help our body produce the precursors that create enough dopamine, or we can eat in a way that is sending us into this dopamine overdrive and the highs and lows that then cause the dopamine burnout. So, for example, one of the things we did last year with my clients is we did a 30-day experience around resetting our insulin levels, because when we eat rich food, sugary food, and when you think about carbs, they're in everything. This is not just the sweets and bread. They're literally in everything these days. So learning what they are a part of and what they aren't is going to help you to reduce your sugar intake. And sugar intake is a huge factor in having healthy dopamine levels. Why? Because sugar is incredibly stimulating for dopamine production. That is one of the reasons why people with ADHD love their sweet treats, right? And sugar is a kind of drug as well. So when we're consuming a lot of carbs, we're constantly sending our dopamine system into overdrive, creating that high set point from where we have the drops. And a common problem in burnout is when people have the afternoon energy crash, right? Like Delisa, you probably know a bunch of people who have that 3 p.m. and you're like, I can't do nothing. I need a coffee or
Yes, yes, yes. I used to be like that, right? When I worked in corporate, I used to be like that. And what I would do is take a walk across the street because they had a Starbucks there, and I would get like a grande or like latte. And the reason why I would get the grande is because either I would have a venti in the morning after I took the train in because I worked downtown. So I was traveling for an hour to go to work. And then traveling, so that's 2 hours of travel time. Yes, I was reading. And when you're taking transit, for me, I can't eat before I go on because I would feel sick. I would be nauseated, which is a problem because you need to eat a healthy breakfast and you need to drink. And I couldn't drink a lot of water, like a lot of fluids. And we need to, when we wake up, drink fluids, right? And so with that like 1 hour piece, just traveling, your body is already dehydrated. My body was already dehydrated and in hunger. And of course, I was working out at that time a bit more. And I go into work. Now the body's in starvation mode, and I wasn't necessarily feeding it properly. Afternoon comes, now I'm crashing. You need a pick me up, but you can't drink too much because, of course, you're taking transit again to go back home, and you're going through this cycle 5 days a week. So you have the additional stress of your work, then you're stressing the body by depleting it of hydration and nutrition, even though, yes, you have a salad and all of those things. But then I was inputting, because I didn't know any better at that time, caffeine in the system to help me through. And then with that, it's like you're going through this whole cycle. Or let's say I was traveling by bike, so I would eat and then of course bike about an hour to work when I was bike riding. And so that was really good because then my meals were set up accordingly. It wasn't until I was at home and I really had to look at, after I had my daughter, my nutrition. Why am I eating? Because I was over exercising too. I didn't even realize I was over exercising. I just enjoyed it. So I was doing a lot more of intense work. You have a child, things changes, or perhaps you get married or in a relationship, things change. And with that change, now you have to adjust. So of course, I recognize that I would have the highs, I would have the lows. You're still focused on what it is that you want to do. I still set the path and I'm in leadership. So I understood what it is that I needed to do. I knew how to do it. However, I had to recalibrate myself for this new season of my life, right? Which is a bit of, it's different. And if you don't have that support, it becomes hard. So I'll be very clear, like, and honest with everyone here. I had to learn I had to learn proper nutrition. And so, yes, I hired a coach, and then I hired a fitness coach. Actually, I had a fitness coach last year. Not that I needed help in motivation to move, I could move, but it was that like neuro-linguistic piece, right? That neurochemistry piece and understanding my mindset. Because I'm like, well, why is the body changing this way? So I got into, I love to read. I did a lot of reading. I did a lot of research. I tried to understand myself, where I am. I'm a woman in my 40s. So there are all of these different things, and then coming to terms with it. But getting back to that dopamine piece, it was understanding how much sleep I need. My sleep is affected when I'm feeling stressed. How am I doing my work? And then taking all of those pieces and ensuring that it works for me on a holistic level. And then even with the time management, recognizing, okay, I need help. I need people to support me with the business and hiring on people. But I did hire on people, but really looking at, okay, what is this long term? How are they aligning? What are their values? All of those pieces needed to be aligned. And yeah, all of those things really play an effect. And yes, when I was going through those high, intense, um, stressful states, I still had the meditation going, because I share up with leadership that we need to cultivate and create the space. And it
Yeah.
is important to do that. So although I was doing that, I was still going through a whole other shift and a whole other season in my life, a woman in my 40s, a mother in my 40s, and finding the balance, not just the mental balance, the physical balance, right? And ensuring that how are you operating at your full potential at all times? So yes, we can do all the things, check all the boxes, but you have to ensure that you, in your dopamine level, is balanced, and that your brain chemistry is aligned in harmony and working together, and that no sugar piece is necessary. And as women, we understand that, there are certain times of the month we want more sugar
Yeah.
or more carbs than necessary. There are just certain times where we just want it, and there's nothing wrong with that, because that's the body's way of telling us what we need. We just have to ensure how we adjust it, so we're not crashing super low, or like going up super high and then coming back crashing very low.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed what you said about all that. Anyways, I could go on and on about this for days, but yeah,
Lisa,
I'm sure you wanted to interject here.
I loved everything you shared, especially like the corporate story of kind of running on caffeine and then,
Yeah.
no breakfast. This is like so classic for a lot of entrepreneurs I talk to as well. And here's the thing, how you mentioned, okay, how do we recognize the behaviors that are there? This is this is the problem exactly, because when you're living like that all the time, and I was one of those people too, then you are not aware that it is a problem. That is why, I'm inviting everyone to take the quiz, go to Burnout Broccoli on Instagram. I'm gonna, plug myself in here, Burnout Broccoli, but like take the quiz to create awareness of where you're at. You're so used to your patterns, right? Like what Delisa was talking about. You just do it, it seems normal, and then you're exercising. And that's a common problem too, right? Like overtraining, when people are trying to deal with an anxiety, and anxiety increases in burnout because that's just a byproduct of your body not functioning optimally. And so people are trying to deal with the anxiety, they're overtraining because it feels good in the gym, they're getting the healthy chemicals going, but you're pushing yourself without refueling properly, and then you're just like deepening that burnout. That's a classic mistake too. And then like you started working on figuring out what's going on with me, what's up. That's precisely like what I'm talking about, that beautiful moment, right? Like when you and I kind of go, and everyone else out there, I
Yeah.
hope, is going like, listen, this is a new season in my life. I gotta figure out what is happening here. And you know what? Like, I would love to wrap up on this like beautiful positive note where all the worst things in my life have kind of seeded the most beautiful growth moments for myself, including my burnout. Like, I wouldn't be here if I wasn't thrashed when I, crossed over into 30s. I couldn't focus on work even for like 10 minutes straight. If I wasn't thrashed by my burnout at the time, I wouldn't be here bringing people cutting edge science, having conversations with beautiful leaders like Delisa, who's doing incredible things, by the way, with her daughter, like, child empowerment. Like, I've never seen anything like it. Like, your kid is beautiful, Delisa. So,
Thank you.
you know what? This is my party message to everyone here on Instagram too, by the way. I want to tell you, use the crappy moment in your life that is like the low point, the burnout, to grow into something new and amazing. It's just your decision.
That's a great one. I love that. And if that's where you're going to wrap things up, thank you so much, Anna, for being on. I really appreciated all your insights and support, especially with all the technical difficulties I've had, where I was frozen for
Yeah.
most of the conversation, and I still am on the main feed. But as well as for sharing your wisdom, your experience, and your level of understanding about our brain, how it works, and how we can move and function fully alive and holistically, because the big piece is moving holistically and being in this holistic way. So thank you, everyone. Anna is going to leave her information in the comments. Right, Anna? Please leave your information in the comments, as well as get in contact with her, follow her, and take the test. So leave your test in the, or your quiz, your test. Are we back in school? No, we're not. Leave your quiz, Anna, in the feed so that people can get the opportunity to get on your website, take the quiz, get on your email list, and so that they can start recalibrating their brain chemistry, so they're not leading themselves to burnout, but in fact, they're leading themselves to a whole, full way of life and livelihood. Right?
Absolutely.
Have a great day, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much, Delisa. Thanks, everyone who joined. Bye.